Okay, and present who we have for our meeting today is Chair Joe Piscineri, Vice Chair Janine Parisi, Board Member Matt Keating, Board Member Howard Saxon, Board Member Terry Fitzpatrick. Else who are joining us, I'll just go through the list here. We have Steve Dietrich, myself, Travis Knutson, Josh Proudfoot with Good Company, Aaron with LRAPA, Beth with LRAPA, Cassandra with LRAPA, Colleen with LRAPA, Debbie, Julie with LRAPA, Lance with LRAPA, and Debbie's with LRAPA too, sorry. Our minutes recorder, Lydia, Max Heffley with LRAPA, Robbie with LRAPA, and we have a member of the public, I assume. JB is what they have listed here. So JB, when we get to you, if you choose to speak during public participation, if we can get your full first name and last name so we can record it for the minutes, that would be great when we get to that point. And that is all who are present currently. Chair Joe.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Welcome everybody, including the people that are joining us, not as board, but as just as guests and staff. Thank you very much. So is there any adjustments to the agenda that we know of right now? Steve, anything? Okay. Excuse me.
No,
So,
none at this time, no.
okay, sounds good. So at this time, we're moving into item number 3, which is a public participation. Everyone is, anybody wishing to speak is limited to 3 minutes. And is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on comments on an item in today's agenda?
JB, if you raise your hand, you asked earlier if you want to speak, so I assume you do. Raise your hand in Zoom, which is a button on the bottom of your screen or your phone, if you intend to or have any desire to speak here during public participation. Okay, your hand's up.
But this part is where it's on today's agenda items. So there'll be a second part for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. So I'm looking for anybody that wants to speak on today's agenda items. So JB, I assume, are you wanting to speak on today's agenda items or for other items not on the agenda?
I have another item not for agenda, so I can wait.
Okay, okay, sounds good. So I don't, Travis, you see anybody else?
No,
okay.
Nobody else.
So we'll move right into with JB. Just have to get through the parliamentary thing. Sorry about that, JB. So go ahead and speak. You have 3 minutes to speak. Travis, you want to go ahead and start your timer, please?
Sure, and then if you could just state your first and last name for the minutes, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for having me. My name is James Bond. I'm here on behalf of respondents Brogan Waybright, Michelle Waybright, Patriot Mortgage Company, 4W LLC, HP LLC, SLW LLC, Applegate Trail RV and Park. I only have 3 minutes, so quickly. The reason I'm here today is to bring, is pursuant to the LRAPA Rules and Regulation 15.40, that allows the board to further investigate a case. And the case we're talking about here specifically is case number 22-3859. And the issue at hand right now is that we had filed for an appeal on the 14th of 2022. We had a default order entered against us for allegedly having an untimely hearing request. And I beg to differ that the request was filed timely based upon LRAPA's own evidence. And I've spoken to some people about it, specifically in this case, a young girl signed for it who is the daughter of the Brogan, and he was out of town. They don't get mail at their house. They get it from the post office, gets picked up from the post office and taken to Patriot Mortgage Company where he works. And so I would like, we believe the request was timely because he didn't get notice till the following day, because he didn't get home till the following day. And he didn't go back to work the following day where the mail was delivered. The other thing is that we had put in a request for appeal pursuant to Title 14-170 of LRAPA's Rules and Regulations. And we also put in a notice of appeal and a request to stay the order, the default order pursuant to 14-185 until after judicial review. I had spoke to, I believe, Connie yesterday for LRAPA, and I was going to request a week extension because we hadn't been served until we didn't get the evidence that was submitted for the default order. We requested it yesterday and got it by email finally. So I was hoping that that this board may take further action or investigation, open this case back up for further action of appeal. And two, if we could get a motion for a week time to file our appeal. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, JB. Before any responses, I would like to respond back that as chair, I believe it would be wise for this board to take that information under advisement, JB, not to just disregard it, but want to look at that. But also I'd like to consult our attorney in regards to the best direction in regards to response to those statements and questions, which would be a responsible thing to do for us for the board members. So unless any board members present have contrary advice, please state so. Go ahead, Janine.
I don't have any contrary advice. I missed the last meeting, so if I'm catching up here, I apologize. Under new business or the director's report, can I just get some context around the complaint, or has the board already kind of heard the background on the original issue that's under discussion by JB?
So Chair, board and members of the board, briefly, this is an ongoing enforcement case that you were briefed on in at least one previous board meeting, just when I went through the director's report in previous board meetings. What's at play here is time to appeal, time to be able to come to negotiations and come to an agreement in an enforcement action that has already gone past some of the timelines that have been allotted by our regulations, and that's what's being brought to public through public comment period today. The person affected or persons affected don't necessarily agree with the actions that LRAPA has taken. And since this has passed through the time periods allowed for appeal, as well as following the requirements of the default order and judgment timeline has already passed, a lien has been placed on the property. So I'll stop there because that just gives you the person that is Brogan Waybright, Michelle Waybright. That's the case that is listed in our director's report.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. And we'll again, I think we should speak with the attorney and get some advisement from her, and before we respond, and maybe, you know, we'll craft a response of some sort and get back to JB so he's not left out there just hanging. But it's not, I don't believe it's appropriate under this venue at this time. Hey, welcome, Chrissy.
Hey
So
guys, sorry for late coming back from another meeting.
It's okay, Travis, if you can indicate she's present, I appreciate it. Okay, moving on to any comments from the board of any unscheduled agenda items. I don't see anything. Okay. Next action item would be approval of the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar?
This is Howard. I'll move approval.
I have it moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have it seconded by Terry Fitzpatrick. All those in favor signify by aye or getting your hand up in the screen. And
Aye.
I had a question about
Oh.
the updated policies related to current laws. So I'm happy to, I just had a question, but I don't want to
so,
defer the approval of the documents.
well, what we can do is we can do a quick vote on the other items, pull item number C, item letter C, pull that, answer your questions, and then approve or disapprove or change, make any edifications on that.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's fine.
Okay, so Howard, can you modify your motion if you show desire with the item C pulled?
Yes, I move approval of consent calendar items A and B.
Thank you, Howard. Do I hear a second? Terry Fitzpatrick indicated with a hands up, is seconded. All those in favor, please indicate by aye or a raised hand. And Matt and Chrissy, I'm looking for a response from either one of you, or both of you, actually.
Trying to unmute. Aye.
Okay, and I got a hands up with Chrissy. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Chrissy. Item carries unanimously, and so let's move on to a short discussion on item number C. If someone wants to, you want to further drill that down, Janine, that'd be great.
Yeah, just a quick comment for Steve and Julie. I perused that. That's a huge body of work, and I appreciate all of the edits and updating that's gone into that material. One of the things that I noticed is that at eWeb, we have annual training on some of our more significant policies, and one of them is on ethics. And we have quite a significant amount of material on the ethics policies for public employees and board members. And I was just curious, that policy compared to the others really just kind of refer back to the state, and there, ethics violations and public trust. I just was surprised that there wasn't more content there. And I was going to offer, not for this round, because I know you have other work to be doing, but if it's helpful for you, I'd be happy to share the ethics policy that eWeb has for our employees as a public agency, in case you want to take any of that documentation and use it for your next iteration. I just know it's something that I have to certify that I've read and have been trained on annually. And as board members, we probably should be aware of what the limitations are for gifts and acceptance of certain, honorariums and things like that. So it's not a small deal, and I just wanted to call that one out. So thank you.
Right. Can I respond just real quick?
Sure, Julie.
Janine, I'll actually take that. There is more to the handbook, which includes some more of the ethics coming in future review. So you'll see more, but I will take what, apologize about my video. But strictly to the Oregon state laws, and what CIS gave us was this, what you saw, where it was a connection to the actual law. But I'll take whatever and edit these even more.
If it's valuable, I'm happy to share that document
Thank
with
you.
you. You're welcome.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, this iteration of these policies are just what the law changes were. And it allows us to, like Janine was talking about, she saw that there was a hole in it, so to speak, and it's true. That's a great observation, but this isn't the final product. This is just the minimum what the law says we must do right now. And then
Right.
we're going to
Yeah.
go through it and enhance that, and definitely probably more so in that area, Janine.
Yeah, and our handbook has a lot more pages.
Yeah.
It was just so large to handle at once, so we broke it up. And these were the ones that CIS and Mary Bridget has reviewed this, that felt that these needed to be sooner than later put in place.
Understood. And I don't want to hold up the approval of these. I just wanted to offer that resource if it's helpful to you, and
Yeah,
just
it
call
is.
that out for other board members, because we need to know what the ethics policies are as public officials.
Right. Actually, it brings up a great point. Julie, if you can, when you're speaking with Mary Bridget, would you also ask or Steve, make sure that our board members are up to date and compliant? I know that the city council, we're going through a ton of that stuff right now and having to get our little certificates of observation of some videos and that and the other thing. But if we can ask Mary Bridget and make sure that our whatever is applicable to our board members that we get.
Perfect. Yep, I can do that.
Thank you. Thanks, Janine. So I'm looking for a motion to accept item number C from the consent calendar?
So moved.
It's been moved by Janine and Howard, do you have a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you so much. It's been moved and seconded to accept item number C item letter C from our consent calendar. All those in favor, please signify with a raised hand or an aye. So I'm waiting for Matt and Chrissy. There's Chrissy with a hand up, and Matt, where are you at?
Hang on. Give me a bit. I'm on a mobile device. I'm an aye, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Matt. All right, it's moved and seconded and voted upon with unanimous approval. That item is now completed. So let's move on to the next item, please. Excuse me. That would be reports. So let's get a Oak Ridge Air Report, item number 5.
Yep, Josh just allowed to unmute himself, and I think he should be able to turn his camera on. There you go, Josh. And
There
I'll
he
share
is.
my screen for that report.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is the report on the Oak Ridge Air program. Obviously, everybody's aware that the whole town has been in crisis for a while. This report is full of some weird irony, so I just want to acknowledge that out front. Some good news, we have a new residential upgrade coordinator. Gwen took a new position with Clean Water Services, and she will be supporting Thaddeus Carter, whose experience is in automotive repair and customer service, to do this role. He's going to get training from both Gwen and from the auditor in the very near term. Everybody's very excited about him. He's an Oak Ridge resident, and he has the right kind of skill set for that. We've also hired a few new outreach coordinators, Mariah Hall and Vanessa Tharp, and they'll be working not just in the schools, but also with the community. Got some bad news on the EPA Targeted Airshed Grant number 3. Originally, they had suggested that we submit another grant because they had told us that we were the most advanced, most sophisticated program in the country, and they really admired the work and wanted to support it. But I'm guessing that the announcement of being in attainment probably took us off that list. And also, this targeted airshed grant is based around emission source reduction, and we had hoped to pursue a wildfire prevention set of strategies in this. We are going to put our thinking caps on and look at other different grant programs. Obviously, Oak Ridge is a case study for what the West Coast health and air quality world must deal with. Incidentally, Oak Ridge has been in, over the last couple of weeks, momentarily been the worst air quality in the world. At first, I thought it was just North America, but actually the world for a few days. So everybody's feeling that pressure from the Cedar Creek fire. Oregon Health Authority came through about halfway through the fire event so far and notified us that there's a number of air purifiers that they could give to us, and a lot of community volunteers rented trucks, got trucks, went up there, grabbed them, brought them back down, and we've been distributing them as fast as we can. These numbers are already out of date. We're almost up to 500, so in total we have about 900 households with air filtration out of, I think, 1,400 households roughly. We are hearing from people in the program that even with air filtration inside their house, the AQI is around 250. So we're going to have a lot of health events and a lot of very concerning responses over the next 2 months beyond when this fire ends. Also through DHS and OHA, we've got some of the larger air purifiers for cleaner air spaces and evacuation sites. People have been working really, really hard on this to get ever more out there and deployed. And a lot of these have gone out through the health clinics. Here's the irony, the airshed attainment. Hey! Through some of our good work, we're reducing the loads of PM. However, we're certainly nowhere near being done. If you look at the home heating upgrade statistics, we've got more and more folks in the queue. We had a disruption with Gwen leaving and Thaddeus coming on, but we're re-ramping up. We've got 64 homes in progress, and we've got many wood stoves, electrical heat, weatherizations in. Watch these numbers over time. They should accelerate again fairly quickly here. Again, supply chain disruptions and labor and cost increases have slowed some of this pace down. Chimney sweep vouchers and vendors, we're getting those out. This has been delayed recently. But this is one of the great ways to also not just support the people that have made the transition, but get a look at wood stoves in other households and let them know that maybe they'd be a good candidate. The firewood program's going along well. We've secured over 100 cords to be processed, and the distribution will be starting soon. Code enforcement, we've got our report here. I know we're going to be working, excuse me, with Oak Ridge and their code enforcement officers to modify the program a few ways to make sure that the oversight's there all the time, and also that we get folks ever more close to being a participant in the program. Education and outreach, one of the things that we're really excited about is that the high school shop program is still running strong and interested in continuing to make woodsheds. The Middle Fork Willamette Watershed Council that's working on all the outreach to the schools and education in the schools will be working with them to make that happen. University of Oregon finished their pilot interview on people's response and perceptions of air quality in the community. This is the beginning of not just understanding people's perceptions, but also starting to document the indoor and the outdoor air quality and the benefits of the interventions that we're delivering. Firewise and fuels reduction. Needless to say, this is a huge topic, and we would like to pursue other grants because the TAG grant doesn't seem to be an appropriate fit for this. But this landscape resiliency project, these are really not just reducing smoke, but reducing the risk of the city burning down. We're tying this into some of the backyard burning avoidance and bringing yard debris to the industrial park for grinding. And we're starting to get everybody through this kind of Firewise and Smokewise programs, start figuring out how they can make more protected spaces around their houses. I can say that that's a lot of the future beyond delivering the interventions we have for home heating is really looking at how we can find other funding sources to deal with what I think all of the Pacific Northwest and the West will be facing, which is thinning and prescribed burns to avoid these kind of catastrophic multi-month events. That's it in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions or to chase answers down if I can't answer them.
Thank you, Josh. I got a quick question. Where's the other 500 air purifiers we can get up to Oak Ridge?
Oh, we already got them there. The first 500, so the first 400 to 500 went, oh, you mean where can we get more? We're pounding on all the doors.
That's right. I mean, as far as you said we had, what was it, 1,600 up there or something like that already, or
Four-
900,
1,400 households, I think.
right? And we have 900 earmarked or have them.
It's DHS and OHA.
Right.
And essentially what we're trying to do is get all of their inventory from them, since there is almost no other activity even close to this.
No, my
No.
more pointedly is that when are we going to take care of the rest of the households? That do we get one in each house?
That's what we're trying to do right
Okay.
now. It's
Perfect.
not built into the program. It's
Right.
just us reacting and
Okay.
trying to get from OHA even more. We're
Okay.
trying to get their entire inventory from them.
Okay. And so also another comment would be in the fire reduction work, et cetera, and the smoke reduction work or the source reduction. Would it not reduce the smoke if the fire was put out?
Oh yes, it absolutely
I'm just making a
Yes.
comment for the record, that fire needs to be put out. And
Yeah.
and hopefully there's some sort of venue that I'm not sure where that information or that recommendation can come from, but seems like for a clean air quality topic that that message needs to be sent.
I
So,
agree. I think Oregon Health Authority understands that. I don't know who we can get into in Forest Service.
yeah, it's a
that
federal thing.
Yeah, Travis, back me up on this, but I can't imagine that the Forest Service isn't aware of this, because so many of their members that serve in that area live in Oak Ridge. But is there something more we can do that you know of, Travis?
Yeah, I can say that I've taken quite a few calls from people in the Oak Ridge area, kind of on this issue of why is the fire burning? Why isn't the fire put out? We would really like that. I can't speak to the efforts or the way in which the fire is being fought. I don't think that LRAPA has the expertise to provide any sort of criticism or critique in that regard. However, participating on the cooperator calls when they happen, the firefighting approach in managing the fire at this point still is focused on increasing the containment around the fire, and that the fuels that are on the other side of that containment line are either continuing to burn, have yet to burn, or are smoldering. And I don't know if there are any efforts to put that smoldering out, and if they're not, if there can be those efforts. And the way I understand it is the expectation is that when the seasonal rains arrive, that will minimize how much smoke is being produced. But to what level or flexibility the firefighters have to put out the fire itself, I don't think we have that understanding or an idea on that.
Well, we certainly don't have that authority, Josh, and Travis understand that, but just the message is that ultimately the best scenario and the healthiest way to go is to just put it out, regardless of where it is on the line, regardless of whether their let it burn policy may work fine when it's away from a populated area, but their let it burn policy in this case is, in my mind, and this is just me speaking not as the board, but me personally as Joe, is that when you have that policy of let it burn in disregard of a large number or a large population of people's health, again, the worst air quality in the world is being created because someone has a let it burn policy. And to me that's again, Joe, it approaches criminal behavior.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and bust in and let Chrissy speak.
Mayor?
Sorry, I'm on a mobile too, trying to take my mute off. Thank you, guys. I'm so glad that this topic has come up. I've been reaching out to multiple sources, including Joe. And Joe, thank you for everything you said. You're spot on. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but the report that you just gave on Oak Ridge Air, that was awesome to hear all that. And so right now I'm working with the state fire marshal's office we're putting together a letter and trying to get supporting agencies. Essentially, so as you guys know, Kate Brown came and did a visit here in Oak Ridge. I spent a couple hours with her. It was actually a great visit. And I'm really hoping that we can come together with some type of letter to one, see if she can do some type of declaration to open up some funding to help people so that they could possibly get hotels and things like that, so they can leave the area. The air purifiers are great, but unfortunately they're really restricted. I mean, you have to be Medicare, Medicaid, OHP, and have health conditions. And that is awesome that those are available, but the rest of the people here are really struggling as well. And as you guys know, air purifiers are not a cheap commodity just to go pick up. They're expensive. So if there's anything that this group can do to get more air purifiers for the average person, what if there's something I can do to reach out or anything, that would be so helpful. But the biggest thing, what Joe's talking about, is, in my opinion, I'll just put it bluntly, it's politics. It comes down to the U.S. Forest Service has their own way of managing the forest. And like he said, that might work great, when you're in Eastern Oregon where you don't have populated areas around, but right here it's not working. It, in my opinion, is very inhumane, and people are struggling. And when we're talking about air qualities that's the worst in the world going on for days, and what we're being told here is we've got another 2 to 4 weeks of this, and who knows the long-term effects. I could go on and talk about with you guys, but I'm preaching to the choir here, I assume. So Travis, I appreciate everything you said. And I don't necessarily think that LRAPA should be out there, telling the Forest Service how to do their job. However, I think LRAPA is a really strong leg for, I think you guys have a really important role where you could come out and just identify the health effects and how this is just really taking its toll on people here, and maybe just help me advocate a little bit to the governor to do something. And I'm really hoping that Kate Brown might be able to somehow, I don't know, twist their arm or something and get them just to put it out. I've already started drafting a letter. In fact, the header says put it out. And I hate to get political, like I said, but I really think a lot of that, this is what it boils down to. Their methodology might work somewhere else, but it's not working here. And we're to the point now where we just need to put it out. And, we've got businesses that are closing. They're having to shut for a week because either they have health concerns or they're not getting enough business because people aren't coming through here. There's just a laundry list. I can't explain what it's like to wake up every single morning with a sore throat, your eyes burning, and a headache. And that's literally what people are going through every single day for weeks. This started August 1st. Here we are, middle of October, and we're still in it. Although the smoke wasn't crazy like this before, but we've been in this heavy smoke. I know you guys are looking at the numbers too. It's been a long time now, and it's really affecting people's life. School sports are shut down. There's just, we're not evacuated right now, but there's a lot of things it's affecting. It has such a domino effect. So any advice from this group on where I could reach out? Anything. I would be so grateful. Just anything. I'm really working hard. So thank you.
Thank you, Chrissy. Before you respond, Josh, I want to get Janine an opportunity to speak, and then you can respond, please. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. This is such an interesting conversation because it's so outside of our normal policy kind of role at LRAPA, but a couple things come to mind for me. I can understand a containment strategy when normally the rains start in October, but we have not had a drop of rain, and we will not get rain for another couple weeks. And It makes me think that the strategy needs to change.
Yep.
And I guess I'm not, the other thing that concerns me is just comes from an equity perspective. you know, we all know that Oak Ridge has a high population of people who are economically vulnerable, medically vulnerable. And then I just think about young children, and, you know, I was going to ask you, Christy, how are schools and how's the air quality in the school system?
Well, our
Were we
schools
able
actually,
to update that HVAC system, and is that doing decently in these conditions?
yeah, my understanding is the HVAC is pretty good in the school, and they do have air scrubbers. My understanding is they're changing the filters pretty frequently, and they are able to do that.
That's great.
But, you know, it's affecting their quality of school. They're not outside. I mean, we were
Mhm.
even to when the bus is coming in, they're having limited operations of the doors being open. It's just, I mean, it's
Sure.
huge.
Sure. Thank you.
Josh, go ahead. Thank you, Janine.
I would just suggest contacting the state's chief resiliency officer and the counties. Dr. Ludke at the county health department, and also Stephen Adams at Lane County, his chief resiliency officer. And my guess is they have probably better access than maybe we do, and to get to the governor. And also, I don't think it would hurt to bring in any kind of the state senators. You know, I don't know if Floyd Brzezinski could ring the bell or somebody like that. But I do think that this is where leadership should speak to leadership. And, you know, Steve and Joe and Kathy, I think if you can get on conference calls with, you know, Lane County Health and Resiliency, and then maybe the state, that's the way to do it. But we have a real crisis there, and I don't think people really get it or notice it because they're not choking on it in Portland. And I really think that you just need to ring the bell pretty loudly.
So Josh, I understand you're talking about local level and state level, but most all of that is federal lands. And so,
Right. I'm just saying who here
right,
can reach into the feds with success because they're at a level, a political level that they have power to do that.
So as a board member, I think, oh, go ahead, Janine.
I was just gonna say, I think that our county government, like Steve and Alex Kyler, have great connections with Wyden's office. And if there is a need for, you know, elevating the health risk to the populations who are at risk and can't leave, you know, getting in a hotel or even just leaving for the day or the economic challenges to small business, I would just say they should be contacting Wyden's office, and they've got great connections. I wouldn't hesitate to at least start a conversation.
So along, you know, and I totally agree with Janine, Chrissy, but also I think Chrissy needs some information. She needs some help. She needs those names and that contact information for those names. Josh, if I may be so humble as to ask you to reach out to Chrissy to help her directly with this, because you're right in the middle of it up there as well. If that's within your purview, if you're able to. And then Janine has some great suggestions on, you know, Alex, I've known him for years, and once he gets behind something, he's kind of a pit bull. So that's pretty awesome. But as a board, if the board sees fit, and I know that there's a line to walk in regards to, we don't have that type of regulatory authority. I get it, but I do think that if something can be crafted on behalf of the board in some sort of letter or informational, that Chrissy can go, and maybe Josh would be able to be more effective there, but I don't know. But I think LRAPA should stand up. We are, our name says Air Protection Authority, and Oak Ridge is in our area, and so area of responsibility. And I think it would be, I just feel of moral responsibility to stand up and say, okay, LRAPA says and concurs that this is a health hazard. We we strongly suggest anything that can be done, be done. And, for LRAPA to be heard, because I'm telling you, if we stand silent on this issue, I think it hurts our credibility a lot. So as a board, Matt, please, go ahead. I'm looking for your input too.
Look, they're talking about a fire that has burned the size of the square mileage of the city of Eugene, a fire whose plume of smoke you can see from space. No kidding.
Yep.
It needs to be put out. Like I'm literally on the streets right now with a mask because the air quality is affecting our health throughout the valley. I think it ruins our credibility or jeopardizes our credibility when leadership is calling first responders, firefighters, criminal in nature because it's not put out. I'm very cautious, Chair, about not overstepping our authority, but the tone and tenor in which we communicate with our elected officials about the dire importance. Senator Wyden was just in town on Monday. I strongly suspect the senator recognizes the severity, and it certainly doesn't hurt for anyone on this call to be reaching out to our federal delegation to quote unquote ring the bell as you're communicating. But the tone and tenor is calls into question our credibility when we start pointing fingers and start saying the actions lead quote right up to criminal activity. That does not sit well with me at all, Mr. Chair.
Matt, do understand that I preface that statement specifically that this is coming from Joe and not as a board member. And I still feel that way, and I'm not speaking on behalf of this agency.
Joe, you are speaking on behalf of the board. You're sitting there chairing the meeting, Mr. Chair.
But anyway,
you're literally chairing the meeting. If you want to offer those personal comments, then temporarily hand the gavel or resign. But you're literally chairing the meeting, sir.
Okay, noted. So I note that. That's fine. So any other comments pertaining to this board item or this board item on the Oak Ridge Air Report?
Yeah, Mayor Hall, I have some questions.
Matt, you still have your hand up. Do you have anything else to say?
No, I'll lower my hand, please.
Okay. Go ahead, Chrissy.
So yeah, really what I'm getting at, I think, is what you all have discussed. I really feel that LRAPA is really the voice for the air quality in the county, whether it's Oak Ridge, Cottage Grove, or Eugene. And truly, as Matt did identify, this air quality is affecting Eugene as well. It's not just Oak Ridge, although, our numbers are the highest, but, I've been into Eugene too, and I see people are there wearing N95. So I really am hoping that this group would help, maybe put an attachment letter to my letter, anything with all your great knowledge and informational behind it would just be such a big help. I did write down those names that both Josh mentioned. Let me see. I have down Senator Wyden. I already had DeFazio, Przansky, and Kate Brown, Dr. Wilkie, and I'm not sure who the Chief Resiliency Officer is. But I can also make a phone call offline to get those names. But all that information is super helpful. But I do really hope that LRAPA would kind of put their face out there as the experts on the air quality.
Thank you, Chrissy. I think there's been plenty of discussion here, and I think that Josh knows and Steve knows kind of where to go, at least go from here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Josh, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll follow up with Steve after this, and we can kind of figure out how we want to approach it. Yeah. But thank you. I'm glad. I mean, obviously, we're all concerned, but it's nice to hear the urgency and the will to kind of get after it. Thank you.
And I don't think we would want to send anything out without sharing it with the board first.
Chair Joe, members of the board, I agree. We just have to make sure from an agency perspective, we all stay in our lanes.
Yep.
So, Matt alluded to the fact that we, how we say it and
Sure.
where we say it are equally as important.
And I get it. And Matt, and I respect your comments too. I don't think I don't. I just, sometimes I get emotionally involved in some of these things and show a lot of, I don't know. I apologize, but it's just something that I get when it comes to people's safety. I just get all worked up and it's in my nature, and I apologize. So I retract anything that may be perceived as something that's going to harm our credibility. And I got your point, Matt. Thanks. Janine, go ahead.
Thank you, both of you. I mean, I think you're both coming from a place of deep investment and care, and I appreciate that. We need people to care and to, speak their truth. So that's wonderful. I just want to put it out there that as long as it's phrased in a way that really comes from a public health perspective and a concern about equity, I am I'm very open to the board signing on to a well-crafted letter of concern. And I really think that part of it for me is that the strategy isn't going to work because the rains aren't going to come. And we are looking at another couple weeks of terrible air quality for people who've been subjected to it for months at a time. So of course, I'd want to see that, but I just personally, as a board member, I feel like there's a place where we can stay in our lane and just raise an alarm. I don't know how effective it would be, but it never hurts to just go on record and say, this is concerning and this is having wide-ranging impacts, and please revisit your options.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing a huge downside or risk to that if it's thoughtful and comes from a place of health concern. So that's my perspective, and I would welcome a chance to review that if we can't, come to consensus and feel comfortable. I understand that. I'll respect the rest of the board, but for me, I'd welcome a chance to look at something like that.
Thank you, Janine. I think everybody's heart's in the right spot. Sometimes it gets people all fired up. So to speak. That was a bad use of words, wasn't it? Oh, okay. Yeah, Josh.
I was just going to say I'm signing off because I think we're moving on, correct?
Yes, we definitely need to move on.
Okay. Thank you, board.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Okay, so moving we're quite a ways behind. So let's go ahead and go with the dashboard report, Steve.
Yes, Chair Joe, members of the board, all this discussion may overshadow some of the good work that I'm going to share with everyone in the dashboard, but it is what it is. We do share this with the board every 6 months. So I'll try to be as efficient as I can, but these are all good, important topics under the National Ambient Air Quality Health Standards section of our goals for the dashboard there. You see the first one there is green, related to ozone levels and any other NESHAPs or National Ambient Air Quality Standards that we need to be cognizant of. So we're staying up with that. The ozone levels are well below the standard, so we're in good shape there. Moving on to the next two, which deal with particulate standards, PM 2.5. What I was going to say there is that, recently, and Josh alluded to it when he did his presentation, that we were able to show attainment of the standard, and we've voiced that with the board members earlier for PM 2.5 and PM 10 in the Oak Ridge airshed. And a lot of times the wildfire smoke has a big influence in meeting the EPA National Ambient Air Quality Standards, which today and last several months has been no exception. I will say that when it comes to trying to maintain attainment, we do have the ability to discount that information, which to the general public seems counterintuitive when they're all about public health and concern for their own health, that we can delay, or if you will, reduce the impacts of wildfires, which are not a lot of times something that the average person causes unless they're man-made started. But a lot of times the fires, and this one I think actually started by lightning, are a way to discount that information so localities like Oak Ridge can maintain their attainment status for longer till they get a plan in place to try to prevent future occurrences. And that's the whole idea behind exceptional event packages, which I know LRAPA will be busy doing long after the fire is out to submit information to EPA to keep the area in attainment, because it does mean a lot to localities like Oak Ridge from an economic development standpoint. And so it's a long-winded way to talk about these two topics here, but they're in yellow, even though we're meeting the standard and have got Oak Ridge redesignated to attainment in a maintenance plan mode. But the Clean Air Scientific Advisory is considering lowering these standards. So even though earlier you heard that we are no longer eligible for tag 3 in EPA's eyes, in their rules, at the same time, they're looking at lowering the standard. So despite our good work to get to this point, it may be overshadowed by a lowering of the standard, which makes it hard to stay in attainment depending on how far they lower the standard. So these two are yellow because of that when it comes to PM 2.5 emissions. So I'll move on unless there's a question. Okay, as we move on, and yeah, we're on complete the state implementation plan work. That's more of the same there with the PM 2.5. We already mentioned the fact that we're in attainment as of September in the Federal Register. So continue on. Targeted Airshed Grant, and Josh has already covered a lot of these areas of improvement when it comes to the wood stoves and weatherization. And so let's move on down to the air toxics and Cleaner Air Oregon. So we continue to develop and implement the rules and fee structures. So you see that it's green for finalizing any NESHAP standards, and we incorporate those on a regular basis, especially if the DEQ incorporates them into their rules. We usually follow suit pretty quickly. On the next priority there, from long-term trend air toxics monitoring. We currently have, when it comes to air toxics, we have two air monitoring sites. The one in West Eugene, which monitors, has been ongoing, and we were able to maintain a second one, which started in July in Oak Ridge. We moved the one from, I believe it was the Amazon Park, and moved it up into the Oak Ridge area, which, by the way, has been monitoring every 6 days, just like the one in West Eugene. And there have been times where the filter has gotten so clogged in a number of just a few hours that it was hard to actually monitor for the amount of pollution that was in the air. So that this is also information we can use to write that letter to the local and the federal and the state authorities. Moving on to Cleaner Air Oregon. Despite all the activity that's going on with PM 2.5 and the wildfires, we've made some pretty good progress when it comes to this program. As you know, this program came into being officially in November of 2019 as far as implementation goes. And we've had 5 facilities called into the Cleaner Air Oregon program, which is another area of pollution that people focus on when it comes to how it affects them health-wise, and that's air toxics. So we called in J.H. Baxter, Seneca Sustainable Energy, Willamette Valley Company, and Hexion, and Emerald Forest Products. Of those, at least 2 of those now have gone through permit actions to incorporate Cleaner Air Oregon requirements. The first one being Seneca Sustainable Energy Permit Renewal, which was issued last month on September 20th. And then the risk assessment was included in the renewal that was issued to Willamette Valley Company, also back in September, on the 23rd to be exact. Emerald Forest Products, their inventory has been received, and LRAPA has provided written response to get feedback on the source. That happened last month. And then we had a new facility called Archimoto that, because they're a new source, have to go through Cleaner Air Oregon right away if their risk is high enough, which they did. And they applied for a new source review permit, and their initial permit issuance, their first permit issued, since they were a new source, was issued on July 1st. So this is some of the progress that we're making in Clean Air Oregon, which is equally important to human health because it deals with risk when it comes to these over 600 chemicals of concern. And so that's a quick summary of where we are with Clean Air Oregon. I'm ready to move on to the next one, which is Air Metrics. Air Metrics, it's yellow because we are in the process of trying to look at the revising the business plan and improving information in the business plan. We plan to have that available at the November 10th board meeting. So there'll be more time to go into that between now and then, as well as at the board meeting itself. But the long-term goals being considered to improve the business model itself is to license the existing air samplers, to expand the product line, and working with designers to create new equipment to meet demand. You can see there that the trend shows that the 12-month sales trend has dipped to 7 per month, which is getting quite low compared to previous years. So any questions there before I move on?
Janine,
Okay,
Janine has her hand up.
okay.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to go back to Cleaner Air Oregon, if you don't mind. Did I remember the Arcimoto as a news source? They had to do a kind of risk inventory, and that the thresholds were low enough that they don't have to do any other additional Cleaner Air Oregon process. Is that correct? Do I
Chair
remember
Joe,
that?
I'm trying to remember the details of the permit, but their risk levels were so low, I do not believe they had to put on additional controls, but they may look at lower VOC paints.
Okay.
May have been the extent of
And
it.
then,
And Max, if you're on, if you want to confirm that or not to answer that question in more detail, I would suggest you do that.
Anything?
I was just waiting to see if Max is going to jump on. And then my other question is, so, you know, can you remind me where the IP facility is in the process?
Well, yes, I can. IP has been called into Clean Air Oregon, or will be called into Clean Air Oregon in the first half of next year, calendar year. We're first trying to get their existing Title V permit in a form that it can be reissued, knowing that we can call in the facility afterwards and add it to the existing permit.
Thank you.
And I don't know if Max was able to confirm that whether their controls were placed on Arcimoto. No more controls, but I do not know if they're doing anything with different paint formulations. That was what I was trying to get to earlier, or lower HAP VOC paint.
Looks like he's on, Steve. Max?
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair Joe, members of the board. Janine, they were above the level at which they required permit conditions. So there are permit conditions that limit risk. The primary drivers are metals in the welding process. So yeah, like as Steve said, they didn't have to put on additional controls, but there are conditions in their permit that limit the risk going forward.
Does that answer your question, Janine? Okay, I see a head nod. Thanks.
Okay, great. So let's
Thank
move
you,
on.
Max.
Yes, thank you, Max. So let's move on to the agency administration section of the dashboard. And updates, the first one, goal or initiative there is update LRAPA strategic priorities annually. This is something that I think we're trying to address by the director's goals at this point. And so about this time last year, we had to come up with a set of director's goals, and we're in the process of drafting and revising that list of goals so we can share that with the board in the very near future. So it coincides with not only this dashboard report in October, but also coincides with trying to use that as a measuring stick for performance of the agency based on the budget year. So, so far I've gotten some feedback on that, the revisions that are being made to the director's goals, and we plan to finalize that in not too many days. And then moving on to the timely permits, inspections, and construction. Some good news here to report, both on the compliance inspections, because the compliance monitoring strategy, which is our commitment to EPA on an annually basis of how many inspections we're going to complete by September 30th of every year, which is the end of the federal fiscal year. And so we are happy to report that we've met our CMS goals with EPA for that inspection workload. At the same time, we have greatly reduced the backlog on Title V sources. By the end of this calendar year, we will have issued either renewals or modifications necessary for the 12 of the 14 Title V facilities that LRAPA administers. The ultimate goal is to stay below 20%, even from EPA's perspective. And with that completion of those 12, we will then be below the 20% threshold. Knowing that then we can work on any backlog that we have for the minor permits under air contaminant discharge permits or ACDPs. So the two facilities that we will have left if we stay on schedule for the Title V would be SFPP and International Paper. So everything else is renewed. So that's a pretty good accomplishment, I think, for the amount of time that we worked, and all the staff that have been involved with that worked very hard to make this goal happen. So I want to also move on to improve compliance inspection reporting and tracking. Here we
Hold on,
are.
Steve.
Oh,
Hang on just a
sorry.
second, Steve. Sorry about that. Janine, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
have just one question. So, we're looking at Title V, and, of course, that's an area where our finances are looking pretty vulnerable. Steve, do you think that this, catching up, putting the extra effort to kind of get caught up and get that number down to the below 20% threshold will have any positive impact on the amount of resourcing that you need moving forward, so that that Title V budget isn't looking quite as stressed? Or is there not a lot of, I'm assuming the reason, that's all labor issues is what's that, causing those budget issues. So any connection there that you see?
There's a little bit of connection, not as much as you think. And I think when I get to at the end of this dashboard report, I can go into that a little bit more detail when it comes to Title V being solid financially, because we're feeling the same effects of the program that's been around since 1990, just like the state of Oregon is going through now with DEQ. But if you can hold that thought for a little while longer, I can get into some of those details. Okay, great. So moving back down to the compliance inspection reporting and tracking, which was under that goal, we're marked green because we've been working with LCOG to expand and develop our LIMFO system. And so in May, the first phase of LIMFO was put into action in May of 2020. And now we're accommodating tracking and information related to permitted sources. So we're expanding the usefulness of this database tracking system. So we worked with LCOG to successfully add the facility inspections as well into LIMFO in 2021. And now we have phase 1 to test for the new complaints module. So we've been adding more modules to this system that LCOG's been building for us. And then in phase 2, we added RLID, which I think is the Regional Land Info Database. And the functionality of phase 1 has been tested and installed. So we're expanding some of our abilities to do things electronically when it comes to tracking and monitoring our work. So that's a good sign. And then moving on to maintain industrial source LRAPA rules. There's a couple of rule actions that one has taken place recently. Back in April of 2022, we had to correct some definition and terms in the rules, which would allow EPA to approve the delegation request that we had in to take some of the EPA approved our delegation to take on some of the rules that DEQ had changed with them earlier. So once we changed those definitions, it was easier to incorporate those same requirements into LRAPA rules. So that was accomplished, and that was done by June of 2022. And so what's left on the table now is DEQ is going through another major rule revision. Many of the industries are in tune with it because it affects how permitting is done at the basic level when it comes to some of the permit limits themselves. And they are going to take, DEQ is going to take that to the EQC in November. And we're waiting the outcome of the final rules there because the LRAPA will then have to start its own rulemaking to incorporate those new requirements into our rules so that when it comes to issuing our permits, they're in line with the same philosophy and the same limitations that DEQ is choosing to do. So that'll be another big project that'll have to take place into next year. Moving on to maintain financial stability and viability and develop multi-year budget projection. Just as we did in January last year, we plan to do the same thing in January this year, give you the 5-year financial forecast. And that's just what we plan on doing. So for right now, that's in green. And unless there's some other things that come up that we're not anticipating, we're thinking that's going to stay green. Moving on to maintain a full staff complement at LRAPA. So we had one vacancy earlier this year that needed to be filled, and we're in the process of filling that vacancy right now with a grant financial analyst. As a matter of fact, the offer letter has been extended to this individual, and I think there are indications that that person may be able to start as early as the middle of next month. So at that point, we'll be able to bring that person on board, introduce that person to you, the board. And so lastly, keep financial reserves at 120 calendar days. And thank you for your patience, Janine. I can talk about this one now. Usually the auditors like us to have 90 to 180 calendar days of reserves. We're in LRAPA overall is in a solid financial position. However, we've been monitoring the funding for Title V program, and due to reduced resources in the current fee structure and not keeping up with increased costs of the program, currently Title V, we have about a 78-day reserve. DEQ is in a similar situation, just at a much larger scale. In other words, our budget for Title V is in the thousands, theirs is in the millions. And they have about 100 Title V sources, and LRAPA has 14. The current funding scheme was started basically in 1990 with the Clean Air Act amendments. And in order for a state to have a Title V program, they have to sufficiently fund it. It's not the kind of program where EPA supplies the funding. The funding comes from things like application fees. It comes from actual emission fees that are charged annually. What has made it more complicated to be able to have that be an adequate fee structure is that emissions have steadily gone down over the last 30 years of the program. So as you reduce emissions, the fees that are charged go down because there's not as much fees that need to be paid because emissions have gone down. In other words, the program's working, it's reducing emissions, but it comes at a price, and the price is fees are lower. At the same time, the air world, and when it comes to EPA and air regulations, more complex rules that take longer to issue permits in Title V has increased the need for staffing to do that work. So, it was partially related to what you said earlier, Vice Chair Janine, that when it comes to those increased complex rules that have to be added to a Title V facility, even though it's existing and it has an existing Title V permit, it's taking longer to do so. In addition, the air program, from an EPA's perspective, have come out with multiple rule changes at a much faster rate. So by the time you renew a Title V permit every 5 years, there's a lot more to do on it. And I'll stop there in case you have a question.
I don't see any hands, Steve.
Okay, that is the end of the dashboard report, and I spent quite a bit of time on that. And as we move into the director's report, I was only going to hit on one or two things unless the board has questions. So I'll stop there because I think the next speaker is someone from the CAC.
Yeah, let's move on. Advisory Committee, item number 7, please.
Okay, Jim should be hopping on here as a panelist in a moment so he can unmute his microphone and give that presentation. Hi, Jim.
Hello. There we go. So we worked on the permitted source survey, took to heart your comments in previous meeting about maintaining the old survey questions for trend data and also the potential minefield of changing questions just in terms of non-representative influence. Given that though, on the fourth question asked about fees, and we felt it was a little unclear, so we're suggesting inserting the word regulatory in front of fees. Don't think that'll throw the survey off very much. And then keeping all the other questions the same, but adding two that could be helpful. How can LRAPA improve its processes? And what are your thoughts on the new website? And so with your approval, we would get this out for a emailing to permit holders in LRAPA jurisdiction and look to have some results over the next couple months that someone on the committee could collate.
Thank you, Jim. I'd like to jump in on just a little bit here on that where it says, how can LRAPA improve its processes? I'm thinking maybe we can get a little bit more global by saying, is there a way in which LRAPA can improve? And that way it kind of opens up for, whether it be the website or phone calls or processes or anything, anybody, we're looking for improvements. So instead of right, narrowing it down to processes, I'd like to be able to see if there's any areas of improvement.
Understood. I don't see any problem with that.
Board good with that? I see nods. Okay. Thank you, Jim.
So as far as proceeding, are we good to go?
Yep.
Okay.
For me, yeah. Go ahead. Head nods.
We're
Good
still
work.
interested in the future in setting up so that public also has an opportunity to fill out a survey. And the thought was incorporate into the new website a spot where anybody could go. If you were regulated, you would hit that button and get these same questions. And if you're from the public, a different branch with questions. But we can save that for the future.
Sure. Yeah, we could. That's actually maybe a good idea, Travis. Like someone can hit a hot button by saying, who are you from? Regulate a regulated entity or a citizen, et cetera, and then do a survey based from that category. That's that's pretty smart.
Okay, well, that does it for us.
All right. Excellent. Any questions? Yeah, Janine, go ahead.
Jim, we had some feedback about, kind of needing to be more intentional and about the work that the CAC is doing and thinking about kind of like a work plan for 2023. Any thoughts about how we can support you in that, or, as you're thinking about projects coming up? Thank you for all the work with the survey, but I'm also looking forward to 23 and how we can help.
Well, since our mandate is to work on things that the board suggests, and if there's anything we want to do to get your approval first, it just often seems a timely and topical sort of thing as issues come up through the year. And we're happy to continue that way is the sense of it. And people have felt free to suggest projects to work on in the past. So I think we could continue with that. Did that answer your question?
Sure. It sounds to me like you're comfortable with more of an ad hoc, whatever kind of like is contemporaneous flows to the CAC. I guess I'm there. We just had some previous conversations during this year about being a little bit more intentional about and leveraging the CAC a little bit better. So I'm just looking for opportunities for improvement so that we are, as a board, using that resource. And, if we're going to ask people to be volunteers, making sure that they feel valued and they're doing meaningful work. So I'm just being, just want to be thoughtful about that, and just wanted to see how it was working for the CAC, because, you know, besides the survey, I don't think we really have anything else queued up, unless I'm forgetting, Joe, which is entirely possible that I haven't tracked, but.
Sure. Well, appreciate that. And, you know, typically if we don't have a specific project or anything in mind we want to work on, we will do educational things for the committee, so that the folks who aren't working with this kind of thing every day can have a better handle on that. And I've got some thoughts on that sort of thing just whenever we have openings in the agenda.
Thank you, Jim. Steve, go ahead. Thanks, Janine.
Yeah, thanks, Chair and members of the board. We might find that some of the topics we start to try to cover in work sessions that is being kicked around, that there may be some special little projects that are equally important that the CAC could help us with. That may be one way to funnel in some of that work that is important work that the CAC could actually be part of.
Yeah, got some work for you on the horizon, Jim.
Okay.
No doubt. All right. Thank you so much, Jim, for your work, and please express our appreciation on behalf of the board to your members, that we appreciate all of them, and let us know, communicate to us if we have any needs that we can assist you with.
All right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next item. Director's report. Go,
Yes,
Steve. Go,
Chair
Steve,
Joe.
go.
Chair Jarrell, members of the board, I'll be as efficient as I can, but if Travis, you want to put up the at least a couple of pages of there you go, that first page there. Obviously, from earlier discussions from Good Company and some of the discussions the board had about air quality, you can see there the unhealthy and the very unhealthy range that you've seen in Oak Ridge. To date, I think as of today, we've had at least 29 days above the PM 2.5 National Ambient Air Quality Standards in that area. So yes, it is serious. And along with the letter, I think we're going to be working on crafting, the data speaks for itself and can actually help prove our point to whoever is trying to do fire management, that this is what we're faced with, regardless of them trying to decide how to burn the fire. So I'll stop there on that one. Any questions? If not, let's move on to page that deals with the public affairs section there, Travis. What I wanted to point out here is that on public outreach efforts right here, right in the middle of the page almost, that our website was launched on September 15th. And we've been trying to make sure all the kinks have been worked out, make any last minute improvements. We've asked anybody that is using the website to provide us feedback, which we greatly appreciate now to make the website better. Along with the fact that when I spoke earlier this week at the Lane County Commissioners, I made sure that they knew about the website as well, and because they do use the website like many of the public do to find out air quality issues. So I wanted to point that out. And then I believe that is the last thing I was going to cover in the director's report. Unless you had further questions. I was going to cover at the very last page when it comes to future agenda item, future agendas. Right there. Knowing that we have still got some things to cover this board meeting, but you see in November, we've got the Air Metrics business plan on the agenda, along with local dues requests to IGA partners for fiscal year 2024. That may be a discussion that we may need to spend a little bit of time on so everybody understands it. And then since we have no board member in December, you see that we move into January, which already has some agenda items listed as we normally do every year when it comes to upcoming appointments on board and committees. Status report again on Oak Ridge Air, but then also we are looking at what could be an appropriate topic or topics to include for the first work session we're trying to fit into that board meeting. And that's where I'll stop. That's the end of the director's report.
Janine.
Just, Steve, if there was a PowerPoint or slide deck that you share with the Board of Commissioners, is that something you can send over to us who didn't get to watch that board meeting? I'd be curious to just see what material was presented. I'm sorry I missed it. I didn't know it was happening.
Chair Joe, Vice Chair Janine, yes, I can do that. As a matter of fact, Travis could probably send it pretty quickly here. I will say that this presentation, I tailor it a little bit because I still plan on doing it with the other 4 partners, having a similar presentation. Also, that meeting earlier this week is already recorded, so you can actually watch the presentation as well at your leisure.
Thank you for that. I didn't have weekend plans, so.
Awesome. You have anything else there, Steve? Your microphone's muted.
I think we're ready to move to the next agenda item.
Perfect. So the next agenda item is going to be old business. Any old business to cover? Seeing none, moving forward. And I do want to make note that we no longer have a quarry. I've been thinking about rocks, a quorum. So I guess it doesn't really matter. It's all informational anyway, so there's no decisions to be made. So any seeing no old business, any new business? I think you have some, Steve.
Yes, Chair Joe, members of the board, similar to the first category of employee handbook rules and information on the legal part, the next category is new financial system related. This one is there for you to review. I think it's presented to you in a similar format that the legal category was, with the strikeout and the new language added to it. But since we're upgrading our financial system, implementing a new human resource and payroll module, trying to get that started in January, this upgrade requires revisions of several of the personnel policies in the employee handbook. And that was last done in 2013. And this is the second bucket of that. The current policies do not reflect the proposed technology and the processes in the new financial system. So that's the main driving force in trying to make sure that we get it done in time so that when Cassell, our new system, has all that incorporated, that they line up together and we won't have to redo it right away. So what you see there in that 19 or 20 page document in this category is a lot of things dealing with things like employment classifications, established work hours, meal and rest break periods, holidays and floating holidays, pay time off, timekeeping requirements and payroll policies and benefits, employee assistance program, and workers' comp. Those are the things that have some kind of either reporting or can affect how payroll and that portion of Cassell actually handles that information. Is that correct, Julie? Did I miss anything? Okay. So we're hoping, we've made a staff recommendation that you can see there, but because there's not a quorum today, we can do something different. And I'll pause there.
I think any board members have any questions? So we don't have what. There's no decision-making process in the rest of this, is right? That's correct. Is that not, Steve?
No decision, but we do need to get board's approval like they did for the first bucket of information that was on the legal category.
Right.
We need the same for this one and the one that's still left to do in the future so that we can complete the handbook.
We need to get a consensus is what we need. Janine, go ahead.
I'm sorry if I missed this. Did Mary Bridget also take a look at these policies, or were these reviewed or developed in partnership with, was it CIS or CSI? I can't remember.
So I'll start and Julie can correct me if I'm wrong. We started with the CIS document and morphed it from our document and used their format to come up with what our new handbook will look like. And Mary Bridget was able to review not only the legal part, I think she's been looking at it. She may have completed this section as well. Is that not true, Julie?
Yeah, she's in the process of reviewing this section.
Okay.
So the
So-
importance of this section is, as a lot of the companies have been going to the every 2-week payroll. So it looks like we may be asked to completely change kind of how we do payroll and HR. And so these policies get us in line with that as we build it into the new system.
So since Mary Bridget hasn't finished her review, it feels like if we postpone this to November, that would be okay.
Yeah, and so the thought Steve and I had on this one is because it is so long that if we gave it to you all now,
Oh, understood.
we could see it in November.
Yeah.
Vote. And as soon as I hear back from Mary Bridget, I will get an update if she has any changes.
And then my one other question, and I'm sorry if I'm prolonging our meeting a little bit today, but one thing I noticed that I didn't see as I just scanned it was there was nothing on kind of a telecommuting policy, and I wondered how that affected your new payroll system. I know that's been a big focus for us at UWeb. We anticipate that telecommuting is going to be with us for the foreseeable future for people who are hybrid workers, but also just because people are needing to stay at home because they have COVID exposures and are healthy, but need to not be bringing their exposures into the office. So what are your thoughts about that as a future component, or do you need that for the new system?
At this point, we have several large policies yet to come to the board. So that would be part of one of them that would come later, because it doesn't really affect how payroll is run. You know, the types of benefits that are offered and how much somebody accrues each time, but it may turn into a certain earn type. You know, there could be some technical pieces, but it's not the bigger ones of, do we pay regular wages? Because you're just working in a different location.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Any additional questions? Okay, Steve, do you have anything else?
Chair Joe, members of the board, I do not.
Excellent. Very productive meeting, folks. It's 1:46. Not too bad considering where I thought we'd be. Thank you all for your participation, and have yourselves a wonderful afternoon. And until next time, be safe, be well. This meeting's adjourned.
Bye all.